Welcome to Running in the 90s.
And today we're taking a look at Danny Phantom.
So this was one of Danny Phantom's hour-long specials. Now if you watch it, it's going to be broken down into like 2 episodes if you catch it on syndication, or if you watch it on streaming, it'll be an hour long.
This special of Danny Phantom starts out with us in the future. And everything is post-apocalyptic with a fancy middle.
And the future, fabulous. Fabulous buildings, fabulous flying cars. 10 years in the future seems a little lie because this episode of Danny Phantom came out in 2000 and I want to say 4? And so that would be 2004. No, it definitely came out in the 2010s. Like Danny Phantom, how old was Danny Phantom?
Came out when we were in elementary school, I think. No?
Yeah, so it would have been if it's elementary school.
Like 2005. Yeah.
2005. Yeah, so definitely we don't have flying cars. That's all to say that the shot opens up on Valerie. And for those of you who don't know Valerie is a character in Danny Phantom that is a ghost hunter because Danny made his dad, well not Danny, a ghost made her dad lose his job, and it's a whole long story that I don't really want to get into, but suffice it to say she has a flying magic surfboard, and she's doing some maintenance on some shield that's protecting them from the outside world.
And rocking an awesome pixie cut hairstyle, which looks great on her.
So she talks to her dad and just about refortifying the world until the communication gets cut. And a mysterious figure's face appears on the screen, and a ghostly wail starts to emanate through the dome city.
After the dome is completely destroyed, allowing ghosts to come in, we find out that this super powerful ghost is actually Danny in the future.
Anyway, Valerie and Knight start fighting, and she's trying to get back to her dad, which now is at Fenton's Works, which is kind of abandoned, kind of inhabited by them. She makes it there, but by the time that she actually does, future Danny, or which we'll be calling Evil Danny from now on, came in from underground and destroyed the Fenton portal.
While this is going on, we see that there are people watching the future as it plays out. And it turns out a ghost named Clockwork and the Observants are watching.
You're the master of time, Clockwork. Isn't it obvious?
To save the future, Danny Phantom must perish.
Clockwork doesn't really want to interfere with time, but he says he'll do it because he's supposed to do the Observants' bidding for some reason.
This is never explained.
And he, later on in the episode, he very clearly disobeys them. So it's not like he's like beholden to them or like they're his boss. He was just like, sure, why not?
That's the problem with you observants. All you do is observe. You know our oath. To watch and never act. Which is why you bring me in to do your dirty work.
Okay, so we cut to 10 years before or the present day as terms of like the show, but the 10 years in the future is past our present. That's beside the point. We're not even talking about that. Mr. Lanter is holding an assembly about the CAT, or the CATS, which is the Career Aptitude Test. And Danny seems to be very interested and is very stressed out about the test, but he introduced 2 people on stage. One, a character we're very familiar with, Jazz, his sister, who scored the highest score ever on the CATs. And also the manager of the Nasty Burger, or the Gross Burger?
No, it's a Nasty Burger.
The manager at the Nasty Burger who has scored the lowest score, and he just wants to illustrate the disparity in their life quality.
Anyway, so with these turn of events, it really stresses Danny out that he's going to become a complete failure. Point in case, later when he's studying for his test, Jazz is kind of breathing over his neck, trying to stop from giving him the right answers.
Okay, I get it. You're brilliant, and I'm stupid, and I'll never be able to get as high a score as you.
So Clockwork is a ghost that has absolute dominion over time. Pretty much no limits, which questions why he can't just stop time and kill Danny, which isn't actually a plot hole, because we'll be seeing later. But how he chooses to deal with him for the moment is that he summons Box Lunch, which is the daughter of the lunch lady and Box Ghost.
Ew.
Ew.
But anyway, they start fighting. She's less than a challenge to Danny at this point. At this point in the series, in season 2, Danny has really come into his powers and has for them. So he's able to take on the child fairly easily with some complications. But the battle ultimately ends up at the Nasty Burger, where he uses his ghostly ray and a packet of flammable kitchen ingredients to incapacitate her and send her back to her own time.
He also ends up blowing up half of the Nasty Burger. Why people are allowed to ingest this sauce, I have no idea.
Well, maybe it's just that good. After that, after Box Lunch goes back to her own time, Clockwork takes a look in the future to see what he has to do next in order to put things on the right path, so to speak.
While the events of the Nasty Burger are exploding, Danny actually ends up phasing through Mr. Lancer's briefcase, since he was actually there eating. And in doing so, being covered in sauce when he went through, actually ends up with the answers to the CAT accidentally attached to his back.
Now watch this. He'll make the right choice, and you'll see you've got absolutely nothing.
Danny doesn't do that.
Yes, he is excited to have the answers and is ready and willing to cheat to the chagrin of Sam and Tucker.
With the realization that he is determined to cheat, we go back to Clockwork and the Observants, and Clockwork makes a comment saying that his fate is now sealed, as we see future events flash by on the screen.
Back then he's his friends. They're in someone's room. I assume it's Sam's room, but it could easily be Tucker's, but it's definitely not Danny's. And they are kind of discussing the implications of why Danny shouldn't cheat, but ultimately Danny decides he wants to cheat. But right as before he makes that decision, Clockwork stops time again, and Danny comes face to face with the integration of Skulker and Technus.
Who, ironically, Tucker can still hack into his tech.
I don't know whether that's exciting or depressing.
Yes, so Danny decides to follow the integration of them too and continues fighting them. Skulker and Technus have some pretty good upgrades, enabling to de-transform Danny and mess with his powers. And almost ends up beating him in the end, but thanks to Tucker being able to hack, ends up disabling the armor, allowing Danny to be victorious.
But at the same time, while they do manage to temporarily defeat him, Danny is still stuck in a trap that he's connected to him. And in that moment, Clockwork's amulet that allowed him to stay in this time is removed from him, and he starts disappearing back into his own time, which drags them to Clockwork's home, somewhere in the Ghost Realm.
I feel like it's somewhere out of time, but also in the Ghost Realm. Anyway, Tucker finds more of the amulets, they talk about what they are, and then Clockwork appears to fight them.
During their fight, Clockwork ends up freezing time. But it just turns out that Tucker is wearing one of the amulets and realizes that these amulets actually help you to work outside of time. So he throws one on Sam and Danny. And in that moment, as a way to get away from Clockwork, they then decide if we can't run to our current time, we're going to run to the future. And they go through the portal that leads to the future that's currently intact.
Once they make it to the future, there's very little time for peace because they notice that everything is in ruin. And almost immediately after they get there, they run into Valerie, who is no doubt thinking that Danny is actually evil Danny, so she starts attacking her. But fortunately, Sam and Tucker intervene, which is weird because apparently they are dead in this timeline.
To their surprise.
Sure, I'm definitely not taking the CAT.
And then in that moment, evil Danny appears.
And a fight ensues. Evil Danny is 10 years older, 10 years stronger, and has powers that Danny can't even imagine having yet. So he beats Danny, or at least tries to defeat Danny quite easily, and also trapping Sam and Tucker.
They realize that they won't be able to defeat evil Danny. So then they remember if they take off the amulets, they'll be thrown back to their original time.
But unfortunately, as soon as Danny realizes that's how they got back to the original time, so does evil Danny realize that. And evil Danny has a quite cruel plan. He phases the amulet into Danny's body, so he can't get it out by phasing or by turning back into humans. So he's stuck there for now.
Evil Danny uses his powers to bind good Danny and then throws him into the Ghost Zone. And while he throws him into the Ghost Zone, evil Danny heads to the future to make sure that the events leading up to him becoming real happen. Evil Danny, while in the past, meets with Sam and Tucker and transforms to look like Danny. So Sam and Tucker are none the wiser. Though they do notice he is acting a little weird, they pay no mind to it.
As this is going on, Danny is stuck in the ghost realm, floating, bound. Even transforming doesn't really seem to help him get out of his bonds. And then he runs into a few familiar characters growing up quite a bit.
Box Ghost? Beware. Ember? Johnny 13?
And I do have to point out, some of their future selves actually look pretty good. And personally, in my opinion, I really like Box Ghost in the future. The man's muscled up, he has a hook for a hand. He's seen some stuff.
I will say I am disappointed we did not get to see Lunch Lady, even though she was kind of teased by having her daughter in the show.
But at least we got to see what happens when those two procreate.
Well, back to the present, or I guess the past, or future past, present. Anyway, back to the past. Jazz, who has figured out that Danny has stolen the test answers, is going to confront him and says that she knows that he was a ghost all the time.
You knew?
I know. And I've been covering for you with Mom and Dad because I'm proud of you and the good that you do. But not anymore.
But all of this makes future Danny just reveal himself to Jazz, and A just knocks her out.
Evil Danny goes on to take the CAT, knowing that Lancer is gonna know that he cheated. After Evil Danny hands in the test, Lancer immediately calls Danny's parents and tells them to meet him at the Nasty Burger later this evening and to bring Danny with him.
As all this happens, Jazz wakes up in her bed, realizing that Evil Danny went to go take the CATs. She knows one thing. Danny's trapped in the future. So she also has the Fenton Boomerang, which is key to Danny's unique Ecto signature, which is different than Evil Danny's signature, because Evil Danny is a full ghost, as Danny is a half ghost. So she throws it in, hoping, and which is just the truest of all gambits. This thing is going to float around the ghost zone for 10 years and eventually find Danny in the distant future.
And it does. While Danny is getting his ass handed to him by the future versions of some of his current enemies.
And right before the boomerang finds Danny, he unlocks a power that he wasn't supposed to unlock for 10 years. The ghostly whale. So, when the boomerang finally finds him, there's a note attached that says, "Find Vlad," which is the only active ghost portal in the future.
Once Danny finds Vlad, in Wisconsin of all places, he sees that Vlad is not the Vlad that he knows.
Come to kick a defenseless old man while he's down.
Defenseless? Old?
10 years ago, Danny's family and friends got blown up in the Nasty Burger explosion. Remember that plot thread from earlier about the sauce being really flammable? Well, yeah, they all died and blew up in that said explosion. But once that happened, Danny had no one. He had no friends, no family to turn to. So the only person he could turn to was Vlad. And all Danny wanted was for the pain to go away.
And Vlad, actually trying to be a half-decent person, complies with his wish. He ends up using one of the ghost gauntlets to separate his human self from his ghost self. But things didn't turn out as they expected. Danny's ghost self ended up knocking Vlad out, taking the ghost gauntlets and separating his ghost form from him, and then possessing his ghost form. But his evil side was too much for him, and thus the evil Danny that we currently know in 10 years in the future is how he came to be.
And Danny asked, "What happened to my human self?" And needless to say, evil Danny killed him.
Now past Danny talking to Vlad 10 years in the future tells him, if you use the ghost gauntlets on me, I can get out the clock that's evil Danny put in me, therefore returning to my time period and fixing the timeline so that this doesn't happen.
Or I could just destroy you now and prevent this future. Didn't think of that, did you?
Back to the present, or the past, I guess. Evil Danny has revealed himself at the Nasty Burger and has tied up everyone to the sauce, ready for it to explode.
But just as he's just waiting for the time to run out, good Danny shows up. And this time, he brought some gadgets to help him out.
He bought the Fenton Gauntlets as well as the Vector Deflector, which are really invaluable to help at first, but Evil Danny quickly overcomes both of those obstacles.
When Evil Danny thinks he finally has the upper hand, as he tells Danny,
I don't have to waste you. I just have to run out the clock until your entire life falls apart.
But unfortunately for evil Danny, good Danny ends up getting the upper hand and manages to capture him in the Fenton Thermos.
And once he captures the Fenton Thermos, he goes to run to save his family. In order to defeat evil Danny, he had to use a ghostly whale, which uses a lot of his ghost energy, so he wasn't able to transform anymore. Him as a human was not able to save his family.
But luckily for him, Clockwork stepped in and froze time. Unfreezing Danny to show him what happened, it turns out Clockwork decided to save his family. As Clockwork explains to Danny,
The observants look at time like they're watching a parade. One thing after another passing by in sequence right in front of them. I see the parade from above. All the twists and turns it might or might not take.
he saw that Danny was actually a good kid and just needed a little help saving his family to prevent a terrible future from happening, and didn't need to be done at the cost of his life.
So not only does Clockwork decide to save his family, he decides to give Danny a do-over, allowing him to do the right thing and tell Mr. Lancer that he didn't steal the answers.
The seal is broken.
Yeah, I know. And I'm sorry. I couldn't stop myself from looking at the answers. But I'm not a cheater, and I never will be.
So Danny does get the attention, but he also gets a chance to retake the test.
After this, Danny has a heartfelt moment where he reveals to Jazz that he knows that she's the one who sent the boomerang into the future to find him, and that she knows he's a ghost.
Jazz is reluctant to admit this at first, but ultimately does.
Didn't want to tell you till you wanted to tell me. It's your secret.
Well, it's our secret now.
And a giant goo monster attacks the city, and Jazz says go.
And the special wraps up with Clockwork continuing to watch on Danny as he sees what choices he makes for his future.
You realize the boy is your responsibility now.
As is his evil self, now that he exists outside of time. I know, but then I know everything.
As we see that Clockwork takes the Fenton Thermos with evil Danny in it and places it into a secret room, with evil Danny trying to break out.
And that's the movie.
And it wasn't that bad.
It was pretty good, actually. I think it holds up pretty well. The special felt a little bit long short. Like, it felt really long when you were watching it, but it also feels like the movie itself should have been longer.
I think a really easy way to say it is that there are just some parts that drag because I think they're just not as important to the story as they actually need to be. And yet we are cut short on some parts that are actually really more interesting and deserve some more development. For example, we see Fright Night in the beginning, and it's teased like he's actually going to be like an important character. But that's it. We only see him in that one scene where he says that he's pledged his loyalty to someone else. And that's it!
And Fright Night could have been literally any ghost.
I mean, he was a powerful ghost in the series, so it would have been awesome to have him seen more.
But unfortunately, that's not what happened. We just got a little cameo from him, and I guess I'll be grateful for that. But overall, good movie. The only complaint that I have is they never end up using Evil Danny again, even though they did tease it.
It's true. Danny Phantom would end with season 3, and perhaps maybe if we'd gone to season 4, maybe we would have really gone to see Evil Danny again. I mean, as you said, it's strongly hinted at, but sadly nothing came to fruition.
Yeah, but I think that's all we have to say about Danny Phantom and the Ultimate Enemy.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe.
And comment if you want, I guess.